The city streets were bustling, a river of hurried footsteps and indifferent faces. For millionaire Arthur Vance, it was just another Tuesday. Dressed in a bespoke suit, he moved through the crowd, his mind on stock prices and board meetings. But then, a voice, small and trembling, cut through the noise. "Sir?" He turned to see a young girl, no older than 10, shivering in a threadbare coat, her eyes wide and filled with a sorrow that seemed too heavy for her small frame. Met his. He reached for his wallet, assuming she wanted money. It was the usual transaction, a simple exchange to ease his conscience and send her on her way. But she shook her head, her hand remaining by her side. "No, sir," she whispered, her breath forming a small cloud in the frigid air. "I don't want your money." Arthur paused, his hand hovering over his leather wallet. He was a man accustomed to requests, to hands outstretched for cash, for opportunities, for a piece of his vast fortune. But this was different. The girl's plea was something he had never encountered in all his years of building an empire. "Then what is it you want?" he asked, a hint of impatience in his tone. The girl looked down at her worn-out shoes, then back up at him, her gaze so direct it felt like a physical touch. "Sir, could you hold me for a moment? Just for a little while. I'm so cold." The request hung in the air between them, a fragile, impossible thing. Hold her? A complete stranger? A dirty child from the streets? Arthur was stunned into silence. Around them, the city's rhythm didn't slow, but a few passers-by began to notice the strange tableau. The impeccably dressed millionaire and the shivering girl. Whispers started to ripple through the small crowd that was gathering. They expected him to scoff, to wave her away, to call for security. He was Arthur Vance, after all, a man whose time was worth more than most people earned in a year. A hug was an absurd, inefficient waste of that time. He could feel their judgment, their cynical predictions. But in that moment, looking into the girl's desperate eyes, Arthur saw something that stopped him cold. It wasn't the poverty of her clothes or the grime on her face. It was a poverty of the soul, a profound loneliness that echoed in the empty space of his own life. He too was cold, but his chill came from a different kind of emptiness, one that no amount of money could warm. He had penthouses but no home. He had associates but no friends. He had everything, yet he had nothing that truly mattered. In her simple, brave request, he saw a reflection of his own hidden starvation for genuine human connection. Without another thought, Arthur dropped his briefcase. The metallic clasp echoed on the pavement, a sound that seemed to mark the end of one life and the beginning of another. He knelt down on the cold concrete, his expensive suit creasing, and opened his arms. The girl hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if she couldn't believe it was real. Then she fell into his embrace, her small, trembling body pressing against his chest. As he held her, a wave of warmth spread through him, a feeling more potent and real than any business deal he had ever closed. It was the warmth of shared humanity. The crowd went silent, jaws dropped. Phones, which had been ready to capture a moment of callous dismissal, now recorded an act of profound compassion. Tears welled in the eyes of hardened city dwellers. A woman sobbed quietly into her scarf. They had expected a spectacle of arrogance, but witnessed a miracle of kindness instead. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop. There was only the millionaire and the poor girl, two souls from opposite ends of the universe, finding a common ground in a simple, heartfelt hug. He held her tight, shielding her from the wind, from the stares, from a world that had clearly been so unkind to her. When he finally pulled back, he kept his hands on her small shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice now gentle, stripped of its corporate edge. "Lily," she whispered. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. He saw the faint scar above her eyebrow, the determined set of her jaw. "Lily," he repeated, the name feeling sacred on his tongue. "Why did you ask for a hug?" Lily's eyes clouded over with a memory. "My mommy used to hold me when I was scared or cold," she explained, her voice cracking. "She said a hug was like a little house you could carry with you, but she's gone now and the house got cold." The story pierced Arthur's heart. Her mother was gone. This child wasn't just cold from the weather. She was freezing from a grief so immense it was a wonder she was still standing. Her request wasn't for fleeting warmth, but for a memory, for a moment of safety in a world that had become terrifyingly unsafe. She wasn't begging for a handout. She was crying out for a piece of her past, for the feeling of being loved and protected. Arthur realized with a jolt that true poverty wasn't a lack of money. It was a lack of love. It was the desolation of being utterly alone. In that instant, Arthur Vance was reborn. The man who valued net worth above all else discovered a different kind of wealth, the kind that grows when you give it away. Holding Lily, he felt a richness his billions could never provide. It was the warmth of connection, the treasure of empathy, the immeasurable value of a single compassionate act. His life, which had become a sterile ledger of profits and losses, was suddenly flooded with color and meaning. He saw the world not as a marketplace to be conquered, but as a community to be cared for. He saw Lily not as a problem to be solved with a check, but as a child to be cherished. The video of their embrace went viral, touching hearts across the globe. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that beneath our different circumstances, we all share the same fundamental needs: to be seen, to be heard, and to be held. But for Arthur, this was more than a fleeting moment of internet fame. It was a turning point. He didn't just walk away and forget. He took Lily's hand, and from that day forward, he made it his mission to ensure she would never be cold or alone again. He established a foundation dedicated to homeless children, not just providing food and shelter, but also love and emotional support, creating thousands of little houses for children who had lost their own. Arthur Vance was still a millionaire, but his currency had changed. He no longer measured his success in dollars, but in the warmth he could bring to others. He learned that the greatest investment you can ever make is in another human being. And it all started with a simple, world-changing question from a little girl who didn't want his money. She just wanted to be held. So next time you see someone who looks cold, remember Lily. Maybe what they need isn't in your wallet, but in your arms. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that reminds us of the power of kindness.